What up, guys? Welcome to Base Damage, and this week is going to be a solo Kool-Aid podcast. I'm actually on the road with a buddy. My buddy is a trucker, and I'm in my pursuit of a potential job. I asked him if I could ride with him for a week and see if it's something I even cared for. So this week on podcast number 51, I timed it wrong. I thought I was going to be back in time to record another podcast at the house. So I'm having to go a little low tech here and go back to how they recorded on the phones. So if this sounds a little weird, plus you hear trucks, engines revving in the background, that's because of that. So please forgive that, and I'll try to make this as decent as possible. A couple things, obviously new announcements and whatnot going on before we get too terribly much into today's topic, if you can even count it as a topic, but I'm kind of having to go off the cuff here, especially considering basically by myself. A couple things to go ahead and say. I am going to be trying to go ahead and, after next week's podcast is already recorded, the week after that, me, Patron for Hanyo, and Waifu Wars are going to be trying to finish up the Kimono Friends set discussion. So it's a little bit of podcast in between that. Otherwise, I would have wanted to try to get that this week as far as for part 2. But a couple things also. We are now seller level 3 on the TCG player account, so I can post up to like 250 items. So I'm about to post up a whole bunch of stuff. So I thought that was really cool that we have that now. So that'll be going up basically once I get back to the house and everything. Oh, fun fact, I am currently in Florida. I think we're in Winter Haven. I had to think about it again. We're in Winter Haven, which is not that far from Tampa. So, I've literally driven to several different states, all the way up to New Jersey, down to Mississippi. Some states I've never been to before, man. It was really cool. Anyway, side note there. So, let's see. In going over a couple things I noticed today, post-wise, which actually one of the posts is kind of going to influence the topic for tonight. Obviously, the Albany Regionals just occurred. Yeah, it was Albany. I had to think of it again. The person who I don't know who the name of the person who won, but from what I have been told, Love Live Sunshine won the regionals. So I thought that was really cool. As soon as that gets posted up, I'm actually going to try to start doing like deck highlights or whatever, if I can, if the English Weiss site permits, type thing. Whenever they get their stuff posted up, I'm gonna try to go over the decks and whatnot. So that was in Albany, of course, with a whole bunch of other stuff. I can't remember what the exact top 4 was off the top of my head right now, because I just saw that a bit ago. But a couple other updates we've had so far this weekend and over the course of the past week. For JP, we're getting a couple other Bang Dream sets. I know they're basically going to be trying to include some of the other characters from it and whatnot. Like in the booster pack that we originally got, we ended up getting Glitter Green and whatnot. I think they're going to be trying to bring in other teams and whatnot. I think the wind's picking up. So, also I'm outside. Anyway, also because I know they were already going to be doing this, the Ordinal Scale movie pack. They're going to be doing that for JP. They're also going to be doing that for English. So that's going to be coming out. I can't remember if they said November or December for English, but that's going to be really cool. Which just further makes me wonder, like, after SAO has gotten so much stuff and has so many cards in their pool, like, even outside of the re-edit, they have 2 full sets. You could almost count the re-edit stuff with the new re-edit stuff to be almost like a half an extra booster. To which you could almost count up about 3 full sets worth of cards. And really and truly, depending on how many's in the movie pack, I don't know if it's going to be a full booster or if it's going to be EB. They may end up trying to do like a full booster, like they did for Excel World Infinite Burst. Infinite Burst is actually based off of the set for that was a movie. But I think it ended up being a full set, which I thought was kind of cool. A little kind of interesting that they were able to get that much material as far as like being able to do a whole booster set off of just a movie. So I thought that was really cool. But I guess they also did the same thing for Madoka Magica with Rebellion. So, I mean, hey, it works. So, at this point with SAO, I'm trying to figure out what would they even try to like really make, other than obviously trying to post up new cards for the new characters between Yuna and whatnot. For anyone who hasn't seen the movie yet, definitely recommend it because it was actually really good. Me, Joe Schmo, and Matt ended up seeing it in the Greenville theaters back in April because they had a couple of North America showings. We were able to go see that, and it was actually really good. It's kind of surprising, kind of hit you in the feels a couple times. I was like, oh, damn, cool. But as far as like what SAO already has, it literally has one of the best searchers in the game, and with the release of the Switch combo, has 2 different builds at this point, not just like solely like last shot Xenon build, but 2 different builds at this point that are very fucking viable for the meta at this point. And either one only loses out to like certain sets as far as matchups and whatnot. I say loses out to, but as far as like having bad matchups, and even then, those decks being ones like one of the things I was always told the Switch combo loses to really fucking hard would be if AOT was running Titan's Power, which would remove like the Attack and Waves Asuna from the game before it could get its switch off. Completely understandable, and but the thing is, some people don't choose to run Titan's Power. The same thing for the rest counter from Idolmaster, Mismatch Pair. Mostly because of the way with Idolmaster, it really kind of focuses off of 2 deck builds in English right now, and only one of them can run Mismatch Pair because it requires red and blue characters. And even then, from what I've seen, because of To Love Ru, with having the Yamis that you can't use the rest counters on, a lot of Idolmaster, anyone who could run those are instead opting to run the 3/1 Hanakos that give a boost and then heal also on play. So being able to opt out for that as opposed to Mismatch Pair, since TLR is a thing and the Yamis with hexproof are a thing. So it's kind of a weird thing right now, even though between Last Shot Xenon, between Switch combo and whatnot, there's stuff that can counter it, but not a lot of people who are running those decks are running those counters or those outs to them, so to speak. Still see them, not saying I don't see them at all, but not seeing them as much as I thought I would. Because I was like, oh, well, okay, Switch combos, if I knew, Switch combo was a thing and I ran either of those sets in the regionals, I would include those cards in some way, shape, or form, depending on my build. But because I don't see it as much, it's just kind of weird. So it makes you think like this, because of that, it makes you question if the Switch combo is that much more viable than Last Shot Xenon, which is kind of the argument going on for a long while. But I would probably still do Last Shot personally. Either way, one of the better searchers, multiple finishers. I don't really see much else that SAO could get at this point to really help them. It's just kind of crazy at this point. They have so much stuff already, and it's like, what else are you going to give them? What else can you even try to give them? So it's going to be really curious as far as like what else is going to be put in. They even still have like the clock shoot finishers off of the new Leafa that still digs for the climax combos, and it's like, okay, what the heck? So really will be interesting, and that's definitely a set that I'm going to be covering once it does come out. As far as other future sets coming out that I know for a fact that I'm going to cover, AOT, a whole bunch of the sneak preview stuff has been released, and I am really liking some of the Titan stuff in there. Like, they have some of them I like more than others. Like the new 3/2 Reiner. I say Reiner, but it's the Armored Titan level 3. Armored Titan got a level 3. Colossal Titan got another level 3. I don't care for the Beast Titan Brainstormer, because the Brainstorm effect, even though some would argue that the Mono Blue Titans, or Titan decks in general, needed the Brainstorm. We already had Sony, and sure, you didn't get nothing off of it, but it was a free mill if you needed the mill, so I didn't care one way or another. Also, hand filtering for buffs was also really good, so I didn't really fucking care. So on top of that, we have the level 3 Armored Titan had like negative soul stuff. The Colossal Titan also had like negative soul stuff, as well as making it so the opponent couldn't frontal attack. It was really cool. I would prefer probably the level 3 Titan, or the level 3 Armor Titan with it as far as like a backup strat, because I was running the level 3 Annie for the minus soul, but that way I could run like 8 pants triggers and not give a fuck. The new level 1s that worked off of, it was like kind of the better Invasion Titan, some people were saying, but I still prefer Invasion Titan over these personally. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was another one of those Titans that you could run any number of copies of. So it was really cool. And the Brainstorm specifically grabbed those level 1 Titans off of the Brainstorm ability. Like if you milled at least one climax, you got like 2 of those Titans back, which I will admit is still fairly nice, but I kind of wish it did something else as far as the Brainstorm effect. I would even be willing to go with like a salvage Brainstorm, even though it would have been blue. That's kind of weird, I realized, but it's a blue. It would end up, most of the salvage Brainstorms are like red, so doesn't bother me one way, shape, or form. So I'm not even going to worry about it at that point. But definitely a set that we're going to cover. Hanji off of one of the Survey Corps chicks, the one who was like freaking orgasmic over the Titan stuff, over researching Titans. She got a level 3. It looks pretty cool. Has several interesting little effects as far as just utility. Reiner and Bernholtz that both like change into the level 3, their level 3 Titan versions. I thought was really cool. But they're red, so splashing in the red stuff for that. Because the Reiner and the Bernholt were red for that, I felt that a salvage Brainstorm would have been even more viable because you'd have more red targets that way, type thing. Let's see what else. Like I'm really trying to just go straight off of memory here, just because I'm out by myself, just kind of walking around. Also, Denny's is very good food. Just saying. We're not endorsed, but it's whatever. Oh, what else? There was something else announced for JP and I can't think of it right now. So please forgive me for my lack of information on that regard. To get a little bit into the main topic for tonight is actually going off based of one of the things that I heard in the Albany Regionals. Or as far as people discussing stuff that had gone on in the Albany Regionals. I don't know the name of the person in question for this, but the dude was rule sharking a whole bunch. And one of the things that came up was an opponent of his got disqualified, or got like a game lost, not disqualified, I'm sorry, I almost misspoke there. I know, we really like how Kool-Aid misspeaks on podcast and shit. It's whatever. How a dude got a game loss because that dude called him out for not drawing a card off of a book trigger. I'm guessing the dude at this point was probably running SAO because Phantom Bullet's a book trigger. That's my assumption. I could be completely and totally wrong on that, and if I am, whatever. Anyway, basically, the book triggers, the 1K1 Phantom Bullet has an effect that states when it triggers, you can draw a card. You may draw a card. It's optional. You don't have to. Like... And because the dude apparently just didn't say that he wasn't drawing off of it or something of that nature, the opponent called the judge over there and appealed about it, saying, "Hey, bruh, he didn't draw off of this trigger. One, why the fuck are you going to try to rule shark like that?" This is where I think there is this is one of the bigger problems of any card game, and that is the elitist shitheads who will try to win through any means necessary. I know we went through a podcast a while back about just people straight cheating, but this isn't even on the level of cheating. This is on the level of just being a douche, like just straight up douche bag. Because One, I know in a podcast we talked about rule sharking, as far as just people who will try to do that kind of stuff. Now, there is a thing, though, and I don't feel that the judge should have given a game loss on this. I felt that I feel that this type of ruling, whether this actually occurred or not, I'm certain this has happened in one way, shape, or form. And in a situation like this where the judge would rule a game loss, I feel that appeal to the head judge should have been made. And if it had, and the head judge even said, yeah, no, he gets a game loss. Maybe the dude backtalked a whole bunch. I don't know. I don't feel that this is appropriate. Because of it being an optional effect, usually if you're just saying at locals or whatever, if someone has the effects of level 3 heal on play, like if it's a new person, I usually don't care and just be like, hey bro, you forgot to heal. That's whatever. If it's someone that I know is not new and has been playing for a while and they just straight forget the effect, I just won't say anything about it. Because you got to kind of keep up with your own stuff. Depending on the person, I try to use my better judgment on that. But if they just straight forget an effect, I'm going to look at that as a advantage for me. Not an advantage in I'm going to call a judge and state they didn't do their effect, they need to be disqualified or they need a game loss, whatever. I'm just going to look at it as, well, they just decided to choose not to get card advantage. One thing I've specifically done, I knew I had a certain number of climaxes in the deck. Went and attacked. Off my last attack, I did the gold bar trigger. The gold bar trigger has to go to hand, but the blind stocking afterwards is optional. And I knew I still had climaxes left in the deck, so I chose not to blind stock. And I knew I still had enough stock for the following turn. That is completely and totally viable. And for whatever reason, if the dude just decides, oh, well, I'm just not going to draw off this card effect, sure, at that point, you probably should still say, I choose not to draw. Or I choose not to activate this effect. It makes me wonder, what the whole discussion was. So I'm not going to go into this exact situation too terribly much because I'm just going to go off a hypothetical thing. Like, if this were to occur at our locals or if this were to occur at regionals, I would just be like, how are you calling me for this when it's an optional effect? It just means that I forgot. I'll just, say I forgot to draw. And when you appeal to the head judge like that, you need to be able to say to them, one, I also realize not everybody is going to have the proper speaking skills in that, or people skills in that situation. A lot of people are just going to be kind of mad and not really know what to say. So I think this may have also been, in the actual situation, dude may have been a bit hot-headed at this point and kind of probably back-talked to the judge. So that may have been the actual game loss reason. But this shouldn't become a problem. This shouldn't ever become a problem. Dude, man, should have just said, look, it's an optional effect. I forgot it. I just won't draw. I don't feel that should have gotten to that point of a game loss. So it's just really weird. And because of such, I kind of want to talk about people who just take any card game, doesn't matter what it is, Weiss Schwarz, Yu-Gi-Oh, MTG, whatever, just a tad bit too seriously. And I feel that those who do that affect the game more so than they realize. One of the things being, I understand with competitive players, if you go to something, I understand for Weiss Schwarz in particular, you got a chance to go to Japan if you win the whole shebang. That's really cool. In Yu-Gi-Oh, there's not even good enough prize support in Yu-Gi-Oh anymore, let's face it. Force of Will is doing pretty decent on some prize support, but even then it's kind of meh. A lot of it's if you can sell cards. For MTG, and I know even for Yu-Gi-Oh, if it's a cash tournament, I kind of don't blame a person for really trying to do what they can. Not to the point of rule sharking as much, but obviously not trying to help your opponent in any way, shape, or form. Trying to look for any advantage that you can is one thing, but trying to look for auto game losses on your opponent is just a complete and total dick thing to do. Even if money is on the line. Example of this was a while back with Yu-Gi-Oh! There was a instance that occurred with a well-known player amongst the Yu-Gi-Oh! community known as Patrick Hoban. Could be mispronouncing that. Anyway, everyone knows Patrick Hoban and Upstart Goblin. That's whatever. Not the exact instance of Upstart Goblin, but it's a little meme that went around the Yu-Gi-Oh community for a while. Anyway, the exact situation that went on was something that Patrick Hoban was very notorious for. Would be making deals with his opponent of, hey, I'll side out this card if you side out your copy. One of the earliest things of this was with era in Yu-Gi-Oh known as the Dragon Rulers, and there was a trap card that basically lets you potentially OTK in a turn, if not almost guarantee OTK. So it was something that was ran a whole lot, and he would make quote-unquote gentlemen's agreements with his opponent stating, if you side out this trap card, I'll side out mine and just not run it for the game. That way we don't have to worry about getting OTK'd by either of us. He looked at that as an advantage, and if the opponent took that, that was up to them. I don't see that as being as bad. I don't think he should have really tried to... I wouldn't have accepted that kind of gentleman's agreement. Personally, that's just me. I was like, nah, dude, thank you for the offer, but ain't no problem. So Patrick Hoban was known for doing this type of stuff. Anyway, that's just one example. A time that he got a lot of flack for this was with the Necroz archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! It was a ritual-based deck. Worked off a lot of special summoning and ritual monsters. There was an effect off of a particular monster. If it was used for the ritual summon, your opponent, as long as that monster stayed on the field, your opponent cannot special summon. So it was a really big thing, especially with the Necroz mirror matches. So one of the things that Patrick Hoban did was made a gentleman's agreement, quote unquote, with his opponent, stating, hey, because basically most people main decked this what was known as Gen Releaser of Rituals. I think it was Releaser of Rituals. I could be completely wrong on that. But most people main decked one. Now what Patrick Hoban did was he side decked one as well. So he had one in the main deck and one in the side. He just went to his opponent and said, hey, I'll side out a Gen if you side out a Gen. And the guy's like, okay, well, cool. At least I can't get Gen locked out of the game, because once you did that to a person in, as far as like Necroz mirror matches, that almost guaranteed you the game. So when they sided out, he showed that he took out that Gen, but he didn't show that he sided in his other one. So he's like, yeah, you see, I'm taking this one out, but he put the other one in. So he made this gentleman's agreement, kind of underhanded league, which, people will try to say, oh, well, it's his opponent's fault for doing that. I'm not going to judge him on one way, shape, or form. I personally still wouldn't have taken that gentleman's agreement, and I think that how he did that was underhanded, but it's in the past, so I'm not really going to judge it too terribly much at this point. But it's those kinds of things where people will try to do everything and anything that they can to win. And I feel that, one, that gave... a lot of people in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community were salty over that shit. Like, really, really fucking salty. To the point that, Patrick Hoban got, a whole bunch of hate mail and whatnot. And he posted up, something about, it was like, I don't care what you say, I'm going to do what I want to do. The other dude probably shouldn't have taken that deal. But, because I never said that I wasn't going to side in my alternate one, because I do run a second one. Or I side deck a second one. A second of the gens. So, sure, he did what he was initially going to do. It's whatever. Anyway, I feel that people who go for that in both Yu-Gi-Oh!, Weiss, MTG, these over-competitive people end up ruining the game for other people. Personally, it doesn't ruin the game for me in any way, shape, or form, because I already know where I stand on a lot of it, and I know that I'm going to keep playing what card games I choose to play. But I feel a lot of people should take into consideration stuff like that for new players especially, and how a lot of the competitive players will talk to new people as far as you have to run your deck this way or it's complete and total garbage. That's literally the stuff that I see posted up on a lot of sites. It's one thing if they think the person's trying to troll them or whatever, but if it ends up being a legit person wanting to learn and saying, look, this is all that I currently have. I don't have any more cards for this particular set. person's like, oh, well, no, this deck's complete and total garbage, and, you know, if you don't run it this way, you're a failure, you know, it's whatever. I'm going, come on, guys, that's not necessary. Like, there's no need for that at that point. And I'm sitting here just kind of going, like, I can understand being competitive, but I feel that some people take it a step too far. Even when we started doing the podcast stuff, and it's one thing that we got constructive criticism from people, and I welcome and openly want constructive criticism. But what I consider constructive criticism and what I consider people shit talking for the fuck of it are two different things. So, if I think that someone's literally just trolling me, or if I think that they're just, you can usually read someone's comment and know what the intent behind it is. If I go to look at your comments that, you know, is like college level essay paragraphs worth of stuff, I'm not going to look at that as constructive criticism. I'm just going to look at that as criticism. Like, you are looking at everything that I said or everything that was stated and just typing your counter arguments to each one as it's going on. I realize this just sounds a little more specific than it should be, but that's the type of stuff that happened very early on. And I admit early on I was a much newer player and still learning the game, and I greatly thank the people who did help us out early on. Earl Grey, Weiss Schwarz, and all of them. Just everybody who actually gave us the constructive criticism, I greatly appreciate. Like, recently on the Titan, the Mono Blue Titan deck was the Mulligan video. Surfing Leifu, I want to say I pronounced that right. If I didn't, I apologize. Actually commented, and I had a little discussion going back and forth with some cards on them. It's like, hey, this is, like, the person was stating, hey, this is what I run. I tested out this deck before too. It's really fun. Stuff along those lines, and saying, I run this, this, and this because of certain reasons. But it wasn't like it wasn't like the person was trying to convince me to vote for for the new next president type thing. I kind of over exaggerate in that regard, but there's one thing to give your comment and give your opinion on something, and it's a completely different thing to just straight tell people what you're doing is shit. Or, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, this is what's true, this is the facts, this is the blah. And really at that point, I don't care who's been playing or, what even their objective is at that point. At that point, they're just being a dick. Whether it's rule sharking over your opponent for getting an effect and trying to get a game win off of that, or even if, say, going back to the thing of new players, or, people just getting into the game, as far as those people, even if you think, oh, well, I'm just going ahead and helping this person because they need to go ahead and know the good cards, or they need to know the better stuff to be able to, the better tools, quote unquote, to be able to put in the deck to help them in the long run. A lot of those types of cards, especially for a new person, are fairly expensive, and at that point you're just flaunting your ego. You're just be like, I know this because it's not appropriate. It's not needed. Stop. I admit that there's probably some shit that we shouldn't have talked about early on as far as like JP stuff that I didn't know about. That was my fault. I completely and totally recognize this and realize that I'm going to be careful what I discuss as far as JP is concerned more from now on. Shout outs to Rabbits actually getting hit after that prediction ban list. Cough, cough. Anyway, even though it wasn't the ones we said, I know. Me just being a butthole. Whether it's the new people or whether it's trying to pull underhanded ways that, trying to do things in such a way that while it may be part of the rule book, or it may be, sure, if an opponent doesn't do a mandatory effect, it may change the game state. Because what if somebody plays a card late game and there's a mandatory effect that states on play you got to top check if it's not a climate, if it's not a character or whatever trait, send that card to the clock that's damage. That's a mandatory effect. If they don't do mandatory effects like that could potentially change the game state, then that's where stuff comes into a problem. One thing I noticed, this was kind of with some newer players a while back. Guy didn't read an effect based off of one of the Mono Blue Titans that state you had to have the headpiece in play to be able to attack with the ass and grab. But he didn't realize that part, and had already attacked with these characters. The opponent didn't read the cards either, so I realized that's also on the opponent's fault at that point. But I happened to walk over and notice it, and I thought the head had just died, and I'm like, oh, the head died? Why didn't the other pieces die with it? Because that's another one of the effects. And he's like, oh no, I never played the head. And I'm like, how the hell are the other two pieces of the Exodia combo tapped currently? Arrested. And he's like, oh, I attacked with them. And I'm like, bro, you can't do that. Like, I realized this was also at locals. I'm basically the person that gets called for the rulings on this type of stuff anyway. And at that point, it was at an irreversible game state because damage had already been dealt. Too many cards, too many unknowns that would have been done beforehand had already been seen and dealt and whatnot. The person already leveled. It was some bullshit. I realize that's with new people also not understanding the card effects. But I'm making this point. I'm stating that to make a point that if it's an effect that would make an irreversible game state, I can understand trying to, even if it's just reminding the opponent. If you end up having to remind the opponent too many times of, bro, you need to remember to do your card effects like this. If they fail to do that on mandatory effects multiple times, then I would probably call a judge. Not, you forgot an optional effect, judge, bullshit. That's not necessary, guys. Come on. Like, sure. It's just not right. I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is jokingly called a children's card game, but from what I see with a lot of people with Weiss Schwarz is we're grown-up fucking adults. Start fucking acting like it. Like, regardless of what you do, like if you're some, little 12-year-old punk, it's whatever. But I don't know. It's some crazy stuff, and at this point, I'm really just kind of trying to talk on and on. I need a drink. I don't know. Anyway, so long and short of it ends up being the fact of I feel that people being over competitive like that just kind of puts a salty, quote unquote, taste in new players' mouths. And if we want more people to get into Weiss, we need to start, I say we, yes, as a collective whole, I'm trying to get better about, new people. If I see a whole bunch of new people decide to show up at our locals one day and I don't know if they like, oh yeah, we're just getting into it, I'm not going to run my most competitive fucking deck. That's just me. I have so many extra decks built up and set to the side solely for those types of things. Sometimes I just get a little frisky and just like to play something different. But if it's all the same people, or someone, or a group of people shows up that I know have played more than me, or just people that I want to play against, sure, I'm going to play something a little more competitive. Not going to lie. But if it's new people, there is no reason to try to shove your gospel, quote unquote, down their throats. Like, follow these rules of Weiss Schwarz or you're going to Weiss Schwarz hell type thing. Okay, maybe that's a little overdramatic, sure, but I mean, it kind of gets the point across. That's kind of how I see it, is it looks like a lot of people are trying to shove some holy word of card games down the throats of new people that just don't fucking, they don't need it. They don't need to be preached to. I say that while I myself am doing my own version of preaching on a podcast. Sure. Yeah, I know. Practice what you preach, right, Koolaid? But, long and short of it ends up being the fact of yeah, there's going to be dicks out there. And to kind of build upon the previous podcast of dealing with rule sharp people, I cannot stress enough RTFC. If it gets to the point where you start playing against people who are trying to do that kind of stuff, watch out for those people. Like, I probably know some people who show up to different locals that I always am careful of. Like, there are some people that I will purposely never cut their deck. I will always shuffle when they present to me after they search or refresh or whatever. I will purposely shuffle the deck instead of cut tap. And if that's something that becomes an issue, something's wrong. At that point, if they go, I said cut or tap, then I'm going to go, what, do you have a problem with me shuffling? I have had some people, I'm not going to call out names, that have shuffled before, presented to me and gone cut tap, and I shuffled, and they're like, I'm sorry, could you cut that again? And I go, I don't have to, that was the final. Or, no. They said, I'm not going to say he or she, they said, do you mind if I cut the deck again? First off, no. Secondly, no. Thirdly, when you present to your opponent, it's for the final shuffling, cutting, whatever. You can't really ask someone again to, if you can cut the deck afterwards, after they've already shuffled. No one in their right mind is going to allow that. And if your opponent just try to pull that on you, simply say, I'm sorry, I've already shuffled. If you try to cut it, I'm going to shuffle it again. So, and if you're the type of person who would ask that, and you think that your opponent is purposely shuffling and trying to stack your deck, then you do need to bring that up with, whether it's a judge at your locals or regionals or whoever the person running the tournaments at your locals is. That's something that needs to get brought up, and maybe not make a big point about it as far as just like trying to get them a game loss, like previous douchebag with book triggers. But if it's something that you can just resolve quietly and just go, say to your head judge or whoever, just like, hey, look, I kind of had this little thing with this person over here. I'm not trying to state that they need to be kicked out or anything, but I just want it to be made a note of. As long as you do that, if it happens with someone else, the judge can go, hey, something was said about this person a bit ago. I probably need to, look a little deeper into this. If the judge is anything worth their salt. I know, right? Salt. It's whatever. Anywho, I probably won't make this like a full 45-minute podcast tonight. Also, because of noise in the background, I do gratefully apologize. But I've posted up worse shit. Anyway, I've also posted up worse topics before. That's whatever. Let's see. Any closing thoughts on this before we end it? Next week is going to be the anniversary podcast, quote unquote. We'll have been posting podcast up for a whole year at this point. Woohoo! I just thought that was kind of cool. Reason I'm stating next week is the anniversary because there's 52 weeks in a year. It'll be the 52nd podcast next week. We ended up missing a week, like early last year. It was due to some bad weather. So technically, this week should be the anniversary one, I realize, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not really going to be picky over that. It's whatever. I'd rather just do it evenly so I ain't got to worry about the difference in numbers each year. But anyway, thank you all very much for listening. It is greatly appreciated. Next week on the anniversary podcast is going to be it'll be me again for the first part of it. The second part of it is actually a recording of the Zero podcast. Basically, when we chose the name for the channel and how we came to the conclusion of that name. So that'll be in part 2. It'll basically be the first recording we ever did before we ever recorded the very first podcast. We basically sat down and recorded a separate podcast with how we came up with the name for it. And then after that, then we recorded the very first podcast that we posted. So that'll basically be that. Nothing really special as far as that. If you want to listen to it, please do. Any other topics you'd like to hear in the future other than we are going to be going over set discussions, obviously. If there's anything else that you want to hear or see on the channel, just comment it in the comment section or private message us. We got a Facebook. Joe Schmo has made a Discord channel or a Discord group. So I just got to get the link from him again, and the link for that will be in the description. It's much appreciated, and we'll see y'all on the flip side. Peace out for now.